The boys have grown really quickly.
Yes, they did. It's 3 years ago that we started our adoption journey.
3 years. Yeah.
3 years when we went to the information evening.
Yeah.
Sat in this really awkward room with lots of very nervous people and listening.
I didn't find it that awkward. You just don't know what to expect, do you? Especially as gay adopters, you kind of feel a bit, I don't know, worried that you're going to have people looking at you there. Well, I suppose you just don't know what the reaction is going to be.
Yeah,
right?
no, absolutely.
We were the only gay couple in that initial session.
Yes, we were. We were actually, but there was no special reaction.
No. I mean, if anything, people were incredibly went out of their way to be incredibly accepting, or rather to make us feel comfortable.
Absolutely.
People were just very nice. You know, in that initial meeting where we went to find out about what the process was. And we met Bernardo's social worker, who then turned out to be our actual social worker, which we obviously at the time we didn't know he would be. But it was, for me, it was an eye-opener. There's a lot of information to take in. Who knew that you would go through there was so much to go through. And I remember when we left and we were walking back to the car park, there was we left with a massive load of paperwork. It was phenomenal. It was about that thick, and I kid you not, and anyone who's gone through the process knows that that's not an exaggeration. You leave with a pile of paper that thick. But I think I wasn't prepared for, I think, the sheer volume of meetings that we would have to then have following that.
Yeah, absolutely. What was the strangest thing of that process for you?
I don't know if I had one thing that was the strangest. I think the whole process is quite strange. I mean, especially in the first parts, because it's such an intrusive thing, isn't it? I mean, we sat down with the caseworker, and I remember, you know, first of all, filling out all those forms, all those paperwork, it is already, I mean, it is a very daunting task, isn't it?
Yeah.
But I think the sort of questions that they ask in the sort of details, things like asking about your past partners, I wouldn't have expected that to come up.
No, and they also having to be a reference.
And then having to put them down as people for them to contact that they're going to speak to is incredibly sort of just weird and scary. I mean, not that there was anything to be scared about, but, you know, that's... I can imagine how it must be daunting for a lot of people to have to put that information down.
Well, what I found very weird were the exchange fairs. Remember these? You know, when we went to those places where all the local councils would come and would have pictures of children, and you would walk around and see whether there is a picture of some children which, you know, you were interested in, and then you could talk with their social worker. I found that really odd. But then we used a number of adoption websites where local councils would post profiles of children.
Yeah, and agencies as well. Yeah, I mean, and then... But it's still much of the same, wasn't it? It's profiles of children with their pictures, and then videos, which I actually found better than going to those fairs. I felt, because you sort of sat at your computer and you just look at them and
it's in the safety of your home.
It was. I think it was less bizarre for me to do that than when you were at those fairs. But, you know, going a few steps back, do you remember when we had to go through and do the 2-day training?
Yes.
Those were a bit odd. In that group, we did have another gay couple.
We had another gay couple.
That was quite good to see.
And it was an English-German combination as well.
Yes,
so it's quite funny.
Very interestingly, one of the things that was very striking was how blunt and how candid they are in that initial first day of training, where they talk about some of the really, real and challenging circumstances under which children then come into care. Because I think a lot of the times, and we've been asked these questions, since we've adopted, when we've met people and then we tell them that we've adopted, and people assume that, some people assume that, these are children who have been abandoned, or, the sort of television scenario of being left in a basket at a children's home,
or both parents
died. And these are the assumptions that people have, and
it just doesn't happen.
It doesn't. Most children have come from abusive homes, have come from homes of serious and detrimental neglect, and just appalling circumstances. Alcoholism, drug use, sexual abuse, and it's just mind blowing. And I remember when we were in that first day of training, and the worst of it was when we had to do that diary.
Yes.
That child's diary. So it was a diary of I think she was like 6 years old. So she would have been about the age of when, roughly around the same age as when our oldest son would have come to us.
Yes.
When we adopted him. And now, obviously, remembering that story it sort of dawns on you that, when we look at him and see his age and his vulnerability, I mean, of course, everyone knows children are vulnerable, but then I think it's different when you can sort of relate one-to-one and sort of personally. And in, reading that horrific diary of how her father would sexually abuse her, and then, having gone to her mother to tell her about this, and then her mother would, sort of just dismiss it, and just mad. And then the whole entire room was just in tears. And I remember that so vividly. And then the next day, we had one couple who decided that they couldn't go ahead because they thought, well, actually, given the challenges that these children will come with, they didn't think they could do it. I still remember those two boys who we had a match with.
Yeah.
And that didn't work out, which was incredibly frustrating. And, it's a massive blow, isn't it? Because you spend all of this time going through doing the paperwork and getting ready and prepared for it. And then, for the better part of a year, you finally get to the point where you think, you're going to, the end result is very near.
Yes. And,
we had, by this time, they had said to us, they were interested, and we went and we did the meeting with the kids' social worker, and we were sat in that room, and then it was blatantly obvious from the start of the conversation that it was going to go nowhere.
I was quite emotional about that, not just because that is obviously, quite a, intense part of the process, but also because I felt this had nothing to do apart from their social worker simply not liking it. You could see when she came and picked up from reception, something she must not have spotted in our file. She just looked at us and I already knew in that moment that is not going to go anywhere.
No, she was incredibly negative and about the children. She was trying to put us off.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then, obviously it didn't work out. But then, as if by magic, it was literally this like the same week, wasn't it?
Yes.
When online you were away.
Yes, indeed. Yeah.
You were away, and then I had a conversation with the boys' social worker.
Yes.
Which went incredibly well. They liked our profile. I liked the boys' profile. And I remember sending the information to you, and immediately you were sort of taken by their pictures and the information in their profile as well. And they were the perfect age. So 2 and 5 at the time. And they were so cute and just lovable pictures. I mean, and just from the description, obviously their personalities, how they described them seemed exactly like 2 children that we could love. And then of course just reading their stories as well, in terms of the things they'd gone through, that sort of, I felt something there. And then of course we spoke to the social worker, and it was abundantly clear that this was going to be a good match. I mean, I felt very good about it from the outset, but I was very nervous because, not less than a week ago, it was only a few days, to be fair.
We had that negative.
That we had that, and but I must say, by comparison, the meeting with our boy's social worker felt very different to the previous one.
Absolutely. And then remember, she invited us to come to one of the adoption events. They do these adoption events which they copied from the US, where they have children which they feel they're harder to place, which believe they go to some sort of play event with clowns and magicians, and where other adults come and play with them. But the adults happen to be prospective adopters. And so the boy's social worker said she could invite us to the event, and that would be a chance for us to meet the boys.
Yeah, and I remember that.
So we had to drive quite a while to the place where the event was, and that was quite surreal, wasn't it? To walk into the room, and then suddenly just time sped up, and then suddenly we were walking into the room, and then we immediately spotted the boys with their foster carers. And I felt I was totally overwhelmed, because I just felt we were about to meet our future children.
We did. We didn't know it at the time, but I think what the thing that struck me really was, which was really interesting, I suppose, was that there were so many children there, We sort of immediately sort of bonded with them, actually, because they took to us, they were talking to us, they were playing with us, they were very engaged, they were very interested in knowing who we were. And again, obviously they'd been told that they're going to this event, and they're going to meet a potential new family, and I suppose it's a bit weird. It must be also very strange for the children involved as well, because I found it quite bizarre, but I relaxed afterwards. And I think, we can sort of process things and understand, and, we're the ones going into it looking for a family, whereas they're just there, probably, even though it's been explained to them, still the understanding of what's actually happening is not there. And I don't even think even today they'll have an understanding of it. I suppose our eldest one will, because to some, he's a bit older, and he'll get more of it.
Yeah, that was a very intense day, and then you had to drive back because I could not concentrate.
No.
I was actually quite overwhelmed, and then from that it really totally sped up, because the social workers were convinced that this would be a good match. We went to matching panel, and then from matching panel the clock just starts racing, isn't it? We decorated their rooms, and then drove where the boys lived with the foster carers, and suddenly started introduction.
Yeah. And I think pretty much about a month or so from the time we first met them,
absolutely,
that we got to the point of, it was probably about a couple of months actually,
yes, yeah.
From the point of actually meeting them, going through to the matching panel and getting the formal approval. I found the matching panel process, I thought it'd be a lot more daunting. I mean, I was terribly nervous.
Me too.
But then it turned out not to be as nerve-wracking. Actually, in reality, it felt more nerve-wracking than it was when you finally leave, and you've got these 12 people who who've sat there from various backgrounds. You know, some of them are adopters, some of them have been adopted, some of them are medical professionals, some of them are, you know, social workers in other fields or in adoption as well. But all sort of having some sort of link to childcare and understanding of what children in the care system go through. And then, you know, they have to sit there and they have to listen to your story. Why do you want to adopt? And I remember thinking, like, before, the weeks before that, when we were preparing all our statements and filling yet more form filling, yes. I think we filled in about 8 or 9 different forms in that process of why do you want to adopt them? What's their life going to look like with you? What are your plans? What are your future plans? What are the challenges you think you're going to face? How are you going to deal with those challenges? You know, all the things that, yes, you think about, but then to articulate it in intricate detail on several pieces of paper is just...
Yeah, that's...
It was tough. And then obviously there are these 12 people who are sat there who've read it and they know everything about you. I mean, they know you inside out because they've had the detailed documentation of your whole entire life's history back to your childhood. And then, of course, they have that additional piece of document. And then they sit there and they ask you a couple of questions. I just felt it was, you know what, that was perhaps the second most strangest scenario.
And then remember, straight after the matching panel was confirmed, we then actually drove to the foster carer's house, where obviously children weren't there because that wasn't the time for them to meet us.
Yeah, they didn't know yet.
But we took half of their toys back home. So straight from matching panel, we drove back with the entire car full of toys.
Yeah.
And then we suddenly had their things in our house already.
Yeah, that was also quite strange. It was a bit, well, I say strange, it was more surreal. It was definitely, it sort of made the reality more real.
Yes.
I think, you know what was strange? I think when you think back, and then I think about after we'd done all the decorating in their rooms and we'd, you know, bought all the new furniture and all the new furniture had arrived and we'd done it. And I remember I said to you one evening about how it felt so empty, even though all the furniture was in there. And then when we put all their toys in there, and it started to look like a proper child's bedroom with all their toys in there, and we knew it was their toys. It's not toys we'd bought. It was, you know, it was theirs. But it felt different.
I know. And then obviously we started introduction. And that was another one where time suddenly just disappeared. I just remember us driving again where they live, having this pre-meeting with everybody involved, social workers, foster carers, and then suddenly we are in front of the foster carer's house. And then remember when we rang the bell, and then suddenly those 2 boys screaming Daddy and Papa.
Yeah.
That was also very overwhelming, I have to say.
Yeah. But good. But I think also it was quite good. I think initially, I was very nervous, I must say, because I think, you know, although we had that chat before with the social worker, and she said, you know, they've been told, and they were happy, they remembered us, they knew who we were. We'd done that video for them. It was like 4 weeks, almost 4 weeks before we met them again. Yes. We would meet them again, and so they had that, and they had the little bears that we sent to them as well.
Yes,
which apparently they didn't once put down since they got them.
And they also watched that video a million times.
They watched the video a million times, the DVD a million times. And then we were there in front of the house, and it was so bizarre because, you know, then it was the first time in 2 months, 2.5 months maybe, that we again see them. And then they're calling us Daddy and Papa.
Yes.
From day one.
Yes. And then 2 weeks later.
They arrived here.
Yes.
They arrived home. And stayed. And now 2 years on, I can't even remember what that felt like, in the sense of it just feels like they've always been here. It's just very sort of normal family life. And I think, it was interesting is that I couldn't wait to get to the point where it felt like normal. Do you know what I mean? I was so happy that they were finally here and that we finally had them and that we, our family was together. But I really wanted the time to just move on quickly so that it could feel just normal.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean? It was all very new and you're still finding your footing and they're still finding their footing, and we had a huge amount of emotional stuff from them, huge emotional stuff from us, but mostly them naturally settling in. So everything was new, and it was it's so nice now that they've come on leaps and bounds in many different areas of their lives, and now it's just all normal.
Absolutely. And it's and we're parents now, properly grown up, warrior ones, school ones.
I know it's very, it's all very suburban and very sort of just normal. So and that's the nice thing about it, because I think you then feel like what we set out to achieve, what we always wanted, was a family, and now we have that. And the good thing is they're settled and they're happy and they're thriving and they're doing amazingly at school and making friends, and they have friends, and the friends are people who are genuine and who don't care that they have two dads, and they can just get on with life, and it's not even it's a non-issue. It's so not something that's ever come up for them, and which is wonderful and lovely, and they can have the lives that they deserve. One of the things that I found quite interesting that's come out of that whole process as well is that the sheer number of gay couples that we met who had either already adopted or were in the process with us, and who now also have their lovely families, and most of them we've kept in touch with, and we're friends with them. But it's also quite wonderful to see that there are lots of other families that look like ours, and that the kids can see families that look like their family as well.
So it's Father's Day on the 18th of June.
Yes, I'm looking forward to all our cards.
Me too.
Every year we get handmade cards from our kids. I have to say that they've improved over the years. The little one still gives us lots of scribbles.
Yes. And
then we have to try and remember what each scribble means. And anybody with children, I'm sure, will have experienced the same thing. But I think the thing that sticks with me, though, is just the sheer number of children that are still in the system and still need caring homes. We've got over 70,000 children who are still in the care system. And year to year we still have over 3,000 children up for adoption every single year, and still not enough adopters.
Yes.
On the flip side, though, there are people out there who either can't have children naturally, gay couples like us who really want to have a family, and we think an adoption is a really sort of good route for us. It means that we're able to provide a happy ending for children who otherwise would have not had the most positive of outcomes, and I think that's what you've got to take away from that. We had a great experience with Bernardo's. I always recommend Bernardo's. I mean, we that's who we went through, and they're experts in their area. They've been doing it for so many years, and I think interestingly, one of the first, if not the first, agency before it was even sort of popular to do so. The first one to sort of to support gay adopters as well.
Yes, and interestingly, remember I told you when I did the Stonewall Leadership Seminar, I actually met, in my group was a woman who is working for Barnardo's and who actually was the first ever gay adopter with Barnardo's.
Yeah. I mean, they do great work.
Yes.
And I like the fact that supported gay adopters for so many years. And I think, this is why our experience was such a positive one, because they're so open, and there was no, not even an inkling of any negative feeling. I mean, every single person that we dealt with was really positive and supportive of us as a couple. It didn't even factor in to the equation that we were a gay couple. They just dealt with us as two people who are in a relationship who were looking to adopt children. That's it. And I think they're brilliant.
Me too.